Mr. Harris here, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to talk about pH meter and data logger. Before we begin, let's just recap what we've talked about in the previous video. So in the previous video, we talked about pH paper and pH scale. So the conclusion we drew in the previous videos was that acidic substances, they have a pH value lower than pH 7, and alkaline substances, they have a pH value higher than 7. Whereas neutral substances like distilled water, they have a pH value of 7. Alright, let's talk about pH meter. So pH meter, as you can see in the diagram in front of you, it's an electronic instrument which could be used to measure pH. And a probe is attached to a pH meter. So you put the probe into a beaker of a solution. So a probe is usually used to detect, or another word is to investigate. So it detects the pH value of a solution. And just a quick question, what's the value that you see over here? 7, right? So can you guess what is this solution? Yes, it's water. Okay. Sometimes we can connect the pH meter to a computer. So you could remove the pH meter and instead connect it to a data logger over here. So the probe, of course, you need the probe to detect the pH. So it detects the solution as well. And then you can connect it to a computer, and the computer could basically show you what is the pH value. Okay? So let us compare. Let us compare between a universal indicator and a pH meter. Let's see which one is more advantageous. In some situations, pH meter might be more useful, and for some, universal indicator would be. So let's have a look. So first, for this experiment, they're going to use a universal indicator. So adding about 2 cm cube, or in other words, 2 ml of vinegar to a test tube. And then you just add a few drops of universal indicator to the test tube, and then you shake the test tube gently. Afterwards, you just need to match the color to the pH scale. For example, for vinegar, as it is an acid, you would notice that it would have a pH value of around 1, 2, 3, somewhere there. So you're going to repeat the same steps with cola, so like Coca-Cola, so soft drink. For a pH meter, let's see how we could use a pH meter. This time, instead of using a test tube, we would need to use a beaker. So a test tube would not work with a pH meter. You need a larger amount of solution. So remember the lab skill I've talked about before, 1/3 full. And then you first wash the probe with distilled water, just so that you clean off any impurities or any other solution that might be stuck on the probe. Okay, and then you dip the probe into the solution. Okay, over here it says you rinse it first. And then you dip it, you put it inside the vinegar solution, and you can stir gently while you're waiting for the reading to be shown on the pH meter. Afterwards, you would need to rinse again. You would need to rinse the probe again. because you're going to dip it into another solution. Now, my question is, if I do not rinse the probe with distilled water, and right after, for example, I've used it in vinegar, then I use it immediately into cola, what would happen? Yes, it is not good because there will be errors. Because the probe might contain some vinegar on it. That is the reason why we need to wash it or rinse it with distilled water every time. Okay? So let's have a look at the results over here. Let's first look at vinegar. The pH value that is obtained by using universal indicator is around 2 for vinegar. However, the reading for pH on a pH meter would vary from around 2 to 3. Okay, that would depend on the pH meter you're using and depends on the vinegar you get. But there's one thing that I would like you to notice is that there are more decimal places you get. So in other words, it is more accurate. Let me write it down here. More decimal places. Now, let's look at cola over here. Coca-Cola or Coke. For universal indicator, you cannot find it out. Now, what does that mean? Or why is this the case? Now, do you guys recall what is the color of a universal indicator? Yes, it is brown. And what is the color of Coca-Cola? It is black. Okay, now just imagine Coca-Cola is black, and in a test tube over here, I have black Coca-Cola. Okay, imagine I have black Coca-Cola over here, and now I'm gonna drip and pour some drops of universal indicator over here, so they're brown in color. Universal indicator. And if I tell you to drop it over here, you would actually notice that the color would still remain black no matter what happens. The reason is because black is such a dark color that you cannot see the red color that is seen for acids. The black color would mask other colors because it's so dark. So one disadvantage of a universal indicator is it doesn't work well with dark solutions. Dark colored solutions. Okay. So in this case, pH meter would be a better choice because a pH meter would be able to show you the reading. So let's see some advantages and disadvantages. I've just shared some. So the first one over here, let's look at pH meter, the disadvantage. It says calibration is needed. Now calibration is something that would make the pH meter more accurate. Say for example, how can a pH meter know that distilled water is pH 7? So what are you going to do? How can a pH meter know that indeed distilled water is pH 7? In this case, what we need to do is we would first need to adjust. We need to adjust the pH meter to tell it, hey, pH meter, distilled water is pH 7 and the rest are this. So from time to time, you would need to adjust and fine tune it in order to make it more accurate. Okay? However, for a universal indicator, it's pretty convenient. You just get a solution and you just pour a few drops. That's it. You do not need to think about doing any adjusting or fine tuning. It's simple. Whereas for a pH meter, from time to time, you would need to adjust it. Okay? So another advantage of a universal indicator is less solution is needed. Remember how just using a test tube is fine? Whereas for a pH meter, you would usually use a beaker, which requires more solution, of course. Okay? So pH meters, it is more accurate. They're also more precise because they show you up to 2 decimal places. Whereas for universal indicators, they're less accurate and less precise. And one more thing I've just mentioned earlier is they're not suitable, universal indicators are not suitable for dark colored solutions. Whereas pH meter, they're okay with any solution, any colors. So pH meters and data loggers, they're usually connected to sensors, and we could use them to measure the pH of solutions. All right, let's do some checkpoint questions. Question 1. Joe tests solution X with a piece of blue litmus paper and a piece of red litmus paper. So blue litmus and red litmus. So we've talked about it a couple of videos back. The table below shows the results. So blue litmus paper, the color turns red, while for a red litmus paper, the color remains red. So based on this table, can you guess, or can you not guess, actually, you will know whether solution X is an acid or an alkali. It is an acid. Why is that? Because the blue litmus paper turns red. So that is a test for an acid. So we know that solution X is an acid, so let's read the options. Which of the following could be pH of solution X? So we know solution X is an acid. So which of the following are the pH of acid? So anything below pH 7. So in this case, number 1, this is below pH 7. This is also pH 4 is below pH 7. pH 7 we cannot, and pH 10 it's too high. So the answer for this is C. Let's see question 2. Which of the following substances has a pH of about 5? Okay, that means it's also an acid. So if you recall, coffee is indeed an acid. Let's look at the other options. Bleach. Is bleach an acid? No, it is an alkali. Is baking soda an acid? No, again, this is an alkali. How about distilled water? Again, distilled water is not, because it is neutral. So based on this, I can already figure out that A is the correct answer. Let's look at question 3. Mary wants to find the pH of black coffee. Which of the following can she use to make the measurement? So you have 4 options. Let's look at option A, litmus paper. Can litmus paper find the pH? No, it cannot. It only helps us to identify acids and alkali, not the pH. So it can't help us to find pH. Can we use a universal indicator? Not really, because it's black coffee. Remember I said you cannot use universal indicator for dark colored solutions? That's the reason. It's black. Let's see option C. Can we use pH paper? Yes, we can. Why not? Let me not put a circle yet. Let's read option D. Option D is pH meter. Can we use a pH meter? Technically, yes, but let's look at the picture over here. Is this enough? Remember, we need a lot more. We needed more solution to use a pH meter, so this might not be enough. Not enough to use a pH meter. So instead, the best would be to use a pH paper.